Just sit here and I watch, and it's just so divisive. Like, there's no conversation about people that are disenfranchised by politics. I myself am like veering on the verge of that. Where, especially for Labour, is the hope there, and you talk about change, but it doesn't feel like it. So
can you elaborate for me on what you mean by disenfranchised?
Well, yeah, I personally, have toyed the line of Labour, Green Party, and I remember 6-7 years ago, before I could vote, of feeling hopeful about this country. I don't feel hope anymore.
And what's driving that? Do you mean in terms of a job, in terms of housing?
Well, look at this, right? Whoa,
social
pause.
cohesion.
Literally, this is what happens when the pundit class interact with normal members of the public. It's just like when Fiona Bruce said, you have to go travel 60 miles for a dentist appointment because they don't experience the same thing. They are speaking for the first time to a member of the public who's politically engaged and under the age of 35 and going, hang on a minute, you were excited by Jeremy Corbyn. You wanted to vote you had hope for Jeremy Corbyn. You're disenfranchised from politics. After we told you were anti-Semitic, Trotskyist, student politic, entryist, naive people who just wanted free stuff. And now all of your politics has been eradicated from the national discourse and you feel disenfranchised? Whoa, mind blown. Incredible. Every single middle-aged liberal who blows smoke up Keir Starmer's arse needs to watch this video, immediately try and interact with anybody politically engaged who is under the age of 35. They're not living high life as a champagne socialist. They're just somebody, probably most likely, works a normal job, has shitty rented accommodation that they can't basically afford, and has no upward mobility and no chance of prosperity.
What you are seeing when Danny Finkelstein asks, what do you mean by disenfranchisement, is the Westminster bubble ever so slightly being popped. For just the briefest second, there was almost like something getting through. They're like, what do you mean disenfranchised? The adults are back in the room. What do you mean, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a representative government that represents what the people wanted, right? This, as always, I will bring up the graph that shows that in 2019, a plurality of people felt represented by a major political party, and now that figure of unrepresentation is a majority. Actually,
it's going to get worse, because even people who didn't hold that much hope for Starmer, but thought, well, the Labour has to be better than the Tories, right? When they find out, actually, they're probably not going to be, that's just going to get worse and worse. They're going to feel even less and less represented, even with the low bar that Starmer has to clear, and he's going to not even try and clear.
Talking
the
to people
bold
on the
choice.
street, everything. I've had conversations with people here, and you just the list goes on.
It's true that we've got problems, but my parents are both refugees to this country. They had terrible experiences in their youth. And all I would say is, of course, this country's got problems, but when I understood what they had experienced, I realised that.
Hang on, Danny Finkelstein. Now, it's true, his parents, I believe, were escapees from the Nazis. Are you suggesting that, I could be wrong here, but I think he's trying to make a kind of analogy that you shouldn't be that bothered because at least you're not having to deal with the SS.
Because the frustration, of course, is the neoliberal politics, the period of neoliberalism, gifted huge amounts of wealth to certain generations, obviously not broadly, not everybody in those generations received those benefits, but there was a big kind of rump of boomers and Gen Xers who were gifted huge amounts of property wealth amongst that generation that young people not only have been shut out of, but have been made materially poorer because of that, because they essentially have to pay rent to these people, because mostly housing wealth. Other things too, but mostly housing wealth. And the disenfranchisement is with the continued political ownership of politics by that demographic, that enfranchised demographic who've essentially controlled political discourse and political policy for all of that time. They've been essentially pandered to because they're a large cohort. Young people have been left behind, and they will get materially worse off in comparison to that group as the longer time goes on before they get pandered to politically. That's the problem. That's where that disenfranchisement comes from, because Danny doesn't realise it, because, member of the House of Lords, he doesn't need to care.
Yeah, it doesn't need to care. Very rarely, I would imagine, leaves his, very comfortable life at all to ever interact with a normal person. He honestly, has he been north of Watford? Does that exist for him at all?
We have an incredible country that we live in. And so...
No, we don't.
This is
No,
not
we
about...
I was about to say, okay,
God.
I think that answers the question. He has never been north of Watford.
Incredible country, yeah, maybe for somebody who spends their days drinking in the free bar at the House of Lords, mate, and your little expenses paid for. For the rest of us, it's a really hard slog with shit in the rivers, a collapsing NHS, school roofs that won't stay up, and a cost of living crisis that means we can't basically afford to put the heating on. Come off it. It could be good. There were plenty of times where we had a country that people could be proud of, but we don't have that. And it's not because of nostalgia, it's just basic economics.
We're poorer than Mississippi. We don't live in a great country because you have destroyed anything great about it.
Exactly,
Not you
exactly.
personally, it's a much bigger thing, but the technocratic ilk, the special advisor class have destroyed the country.
Absolutely, they've gutted it for them and their mates. As somebody points out, we've got an incredible financial sector. Well, our entire economy is just 4 financiers in a trench coat. That's all we have. We have nothing else in our economy apart from Warhammer. We've got Warhammer as well.
That is also true. Honestly, the money you won in Italy, I think, might be our biggest net gain financially this year, to be honest with you.
Government or their success or failure is a much more general point that I'm making. I'd hope that we'd all agree with that. I think we live in an amazing political democracy. What happened last night, that peaceful change of government, was incredible.
Oh,
Actually,
okay,
this country, by
right.
comparison,
His idea of successful democracy, well, at least there wasn't a military coup.
It literally is basically saying, count your blessings, at least there aren't Nazis.
At least Mengistu didn't execute King Charles and rise to power through a military junta. Yeah, like, sure, we had a peaceful transfer of parliamentary democracy. That's not going to pay my bills. That's not going to pay the bills, Danny. At least Colonel Mengistu understood that the people's material conditions need to be met. None of our politicians seem to understand that.
and with lots of periods of its history is quite prosperous. We do have public services.
Quite prosperous for you.
There was a period where it was very prosperous. It was from 1945 till 1979. I wonder which political party and political ideology changed that.
All I see is my friends and me getting richer. Why are you complaining, mate? I want to take these people on a trip through a deserted coal mining town. Just
Exactly.
a hollowed out, take them through the estates of Sheffield. Take them to Brom.
Hour and a half, mate. Go watch the full Monty. Go watch the full Monty.
Literally watched them. That was made 30 fucking years ago.
And watch Brastoff as well whilst you're at it.
And it's gotten worse since then.
Yeah, it's gotten worse since then. And also on top of that, you have the problem that it's not just those areas that aren't prosperous anymore. Our cities aren't like that either. Our cities are full of poor young people in rented accommodation, and our satellite towns are full of, it's literally, this is what Ghost Town, the song Ghost Town was written about. The ghost towns of Margaret Thatcher's era that were just gutted by deindustrialization and like old mining communities. We are just 4 financiers in a trench coat. That's all it is.
That are available even for us to debate about whether or not they're good. And so what I would urge is, I don't think that pessimism is completely grounded, fair. And I think
I hate him.
Hopefully,
I know. The idea that this rich lord prick is like, actually, I think you'll find you've not grounded your moral axioms on this one, chap. I'm doing very well, so actually, therefore, everyone must be doing really well. Why are you complaining?
I know the climate is collapsing, the far right is on the rise across the world, especially across Europe. You can't afford to pay your rent, there's shit in the rivers, and you can't afford to feed your kids. And also on top of that, you have no vertical progression. Your job's is an absolute miserable, sucky mess with no conditions and very low pay. And on top of all of this, the world's burning. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.